We're back to investigating abandoned railroads. In this video series, we'll explore an electric trolley system that passed through Kane and Kendall Counties in Illinois and was the elder sibling of the Chicago, Aurora, and Elgin Railroad.
This was the Elgin, Aurora, and Southern Traction Railway, which in its prime 100 years ago started right here in Carpentersville, northern Kane County, Illinois, extending 40 miles south along the Fox River to Yorkville in Kendall County, and serving communities such as Carpentersville, Dundee, Elgin, St. Charles, Geneva, Batavia, Aurora, Oswego, Yorkville, and others.
Please join us as we explore this historic Illinois Electric Railway.
Primary sources for this video series include the book, The Great Third Rail, by the Central Electric Railfans Association, published in 1961. The web article, Building the Fox River Line, authored by Andy Roth, published by the Fox River Trolley Museum. Contemporary newspaper articles. Contemporary trade magazine articles. Period maps and aerial photographs.
Today, as we waver and lurch towards electrified automobiles, as well as electrified railroads, it's difficult to imagine that the U.S. Midwest and the Chicago metropolitan area were once covered by a wide-ranging network of electric interurban railroads, which served hundreds of communities and millions of people more than 100 years ago. In Illinois, trolley systems roved out from St. Louis, Urbana, Springfield, Bloomington, Ottawa, Galesburg, Rockford, and of course Chicago. Within northern Illinois, interurbans were linked from Princeton, DeKalb, Rockford, and Kankakee to Chicago. To the north in Wisconsin, Chicago was connected with Milwaukee, Sheboygan, Watertown, East Troy, and Burlington. To the south and west into Indiana, trolley systems carried passengers to Crown Point, Valparaiso, Mishawaka, Warsaw, and Benton Harbor. And many of these railroads, too, were linked with the ferries that crisscrossed the vast waters of Lake Michigan.
Electricity and electrical-powered transportation were the latest technology and all the rage in the United States in the 1900 timeframe. Thousands of new electric railway companies and systems sprang into being in the early 1890s through the early 1910s, fed by money pouring in from venture capitalists and investors. They were the bitcoins of their day, and they were fulfilling a fundamental market need for the masses, transportation. At a time when most people traveled by walking, riding in a horse-drawn wagon or buggy over rough roads, or taking the occasional steam-powered train, the notion of taking a street trolley from one neighborhood to another, or one town to another, over relatively flat and smooth rails, for a few cents fare, was indeed appealing.
Which is where we'll pick up our story of the Fox River Trolley System, the Elgin, Aurora, and Southern Traction Railway, which had deep roots in Kane County, Illinois. As we shall see, the street trolley system originated in both Elgin and Aurora, two emerging cities straddling the Fox River. As early as 1878, the enterprising Bruce Chester Payne built a 1-mile-long trolley, powered by horses, along Grove Avenue in Elgin, on the east side of the river. He eventually extended his streetcar trackage to almost 3 miles, extending into northeast neighborhoods of Elgin. In October of 1889, Payne sold out to the Elgin City Railway Company, which brought in more capital and management, with plans to greatly expand and electrify Payne's trolley system. And indeed, their new electric trolley system was transporting people all across Elgin, as well as supplying electrical power and lighting to the city by December of 1890.
Meanwhile, 20 miles to the south, a horse-drawn trolley system had been launched by local businessman Henry H. Evans and others in 1882 as part of their newly formed Aurora Street Railway Company. Recall that we previously met Henry H. Evans when we discussed the Phillips Park Mastodons in our Ice Age Kane series. Aurora's horse trolley system did good business for a period of years, but was under constant pressure by patrons to service more neighborhoods and by investors to electrify. In November of 1890, the company was sold to an Eastern syndicate, financed from New York, which again was able to infuse a great deal more capital into the railway. The indomitable Henry H. Evans continued to run the company, however. The Aurora Street Railway saw its first electrified trolleys running by March of 1891, and was running over 17 miles of trackage in Aurora neighborhoods by the end of that year.
With these two electric trolley franchises anchoring the north and south of the Fox River Valley, the two companies sought to expand, both primarily looking towards Geneva, the Kane County seat, where much business was conducted from both Elgin and Aurora. In 1895, the management of the two metropolitan trolley companies agreed, in principle, to consolidate under a single company with a single mission of extending the trolley system from Carpentersville to the north to Yorkville to the south. They sought and obtained additional capital from their New York financiers to fund the enterprise.
To expand out from Elgin, a new company was incorporated in 1895, the Carpentersville, Elgin, and Aurora Railway, with a mission to expand northward from Elgin through Dundee to Carpentersville, and to expand southward from South Elgin and Coleman, then through St. Charles to Geneva. The plan was to meet in the middle at Geneva, with northward extensions by the Aurora Street Railway Company. The new company moved quickly, and Elgin's electric trolleys were running to Carpentersville by the middle of 1895, and south to Geneva by the middle of 1896.
To expand south and northward from Aurora, two new streetcar companies were incorporated, although moving more slowly than its siblings in Elgin. The Aurora and Geneva Railway was formed in the summer of 1896, while the Aurora, Yorkville, and Moores Railroad was incorporated in the spring of 1897. The south expansion had relatively little trouble, although it had to deal with trolley franchises in another county, Kendall County, to the south of Kane County. Their electric line was built and operational by late 1899, running to Montgomery and to the newly built Riverview Park on the Fox River, an even larger picnic and amusement venue than Evans Park, southeast of Aurora. Electric trains were running from Aurora to Oswego by the summer of 1900, and to Yorkville by late December of that same year.
However, the line from Aurora to Geneva turned out to be the hardest nut to crack. The Aurora and Geneva Railway was immediately beset by resistance from wealthy landowners on the west side of the river between Batavia and Geneva, who filed petitions with the Kane County government protesting the planned railway extension, even before the new railway company organized. Nonetheless, the Aurora to Geneva Railway did manage to get most of the way to Geneva, laying track through North Aurora and northern Batavia, with trolley trains running by late October of 1896. But here things came to a standstill for another 4 years, while the Aurora and Geneva Railway wrangled with the Geneva City Council, the Geneva Mayor, and a dozen or so property owners south of Geneva. Trolley travelers between Elgin and Aurora had to take a horse-drawn wagon between the North Batavia station and the Geneva station from late 1896 onwards.
However, the dam finally broke as a result of Illinois Supreme Court victories in favor of the railroad in May of 1900, which then enabled the Aurora and Geneva Railway to build to the south limit of Geneva proper, this time blocked by the Geneva mayor. Trolley travelers now had to walk a few blocks from the south edge of Geneva to the Elgin Trolley Line station to continue their journey. But the mayor was ultimately outplayed by the railroad, and the Aurora and Geneva Railroad was finally granted a franchise into Geneva in November of 1900. The last piece of the Fox Valley trolley system had now finally fallen into place.
But just as the 1895 dream of a Carpentersville to Yorkville electric train system had come to fruition, the entire chain of Fox Valley railroads were sold in the final weeks of December 1900 to a Cleveland syndicate, the Western Reserve Trust Company, led by Maurice J. Mandelbaum, and represented by his brother-in-law, Leopold J. Wolfe. The leadership of the Fox River trolley system was dismissed, although some continued on as investors. They were replaced with a new management team, led by Wolfe.
By May of 1901, Wolfe, Frank Bicknell, and Harris Greenbaum incorporated a new company, the Elgin, Aurora, and Southern Traction Company, which subsumed the Elgin City Railway, the Carpentersville and Aurora Railway, the Aurora and Geneva Railway, the Aurora Street Railway, and the Aurora, Yorkville, and Morris Railway. This was part of the broader interurban initiative led by two Cleveland syndicates, the Fred T. Pomeroy and M. J. Mandelbaum Syndicate, and the Henry A. Everett and Edward W. Morse Syndicate, in what was to become the Aurora, Elgin, and Chicago Railway. This larger electric railroad system brought routes from Chicago, via Wheaton, out to Aurora and Elgin, creating an expansive and modern interurban network, serving dozens of communities and perhaps 1 million potential customers.
The electric trolley cars that ran on the wide-ranging AE&C system were fairly interchangeable, operational on both the Chicago to Aurora and Elgin routes, as well as the Fox River Valley route. The key difference between these two segments of the new railroad was that the Chicago to Aurora and Elgin routes were powered primarily via electric current running on the third rail, hence its nickname, the Great Third Rail, while the Fox Valley route was powered almost exclusively by overhead trolley wires via the trolley pole. Another difference is that single cars were the norm on the Fox Valley system, while multi-car trains were common on the Great Third Rail.
In 1906, the Aurora, Elgin, and Chicago Railway formally created the Fox River Division, to be managed separately from the Third Rail Division, to formalize the segmentation of the railroad which had existed since its inception. But after almost 2 decades of a successful run, the AE&C, stymied by the economic impacts of World War I and regulatory price pressures amidst major infrastructure improvements, was crippled by a labor strike and thus went into receivership in August of 1919. Coming out of receivership in the early 1920s as 2 separate companies, the AE&C split along its Third Rail Division and the Fox River Division, with the former renamed as the Chicago, Aurora, and Elgin Railroad, and the latter now referred to as the Aurora, Elgin, and Fox River Electric Company.
Although the new trolley company attempted to make a go of it, the ensuing decade saw the gradual elimination of routes, accelerated by the onset of the U.S. Great Depression late in 1929. Just as the railroad had been built up along the Fox River piece by piece in the 1890s, various segments of the railroad were abandoned section by section in the late 1920s and early 1930s, with virtually all passenger service removed by the mid-1930s. But as we shall see, a small portion of the route south of Elgin miraculously held on and continued in freight operations long after.
We'll follow along the main line of this old abandoned trolley line, from here in Carpentersville in Kane County, to its final terminus in Yorkville in Kendall County. We'll make much of this journey via bicycle, where it's safe and possible to do so, especially where the main line overlaps with the Fox River Trail. But where it's not safe to do so, we'll use an automobile to follow its path, especially where the trolley line ran down the middle of, or alongside, what today are busy roads and highways. Where the route cannot be traveled by either bicycle or automobile, we'll traverse its route through the air via a drone. And as we'll discover, there is yet a 2-mile portion of the former railway that has survived to the present day, still traversed by trolley cars similar to those that rode this road 100 years ago.
We will begin our journey in the heart of Old Carpentersville, from the east side of the Main Street Bridge over the Fox River, where 100 years ago the trolley would stop for street boarding. Street boarding was the principal method of hopping on and off these streetcars. There were relatively few waiting stations on the route, and these were often placed only at interchanges or at more remote outposts, where people had to walk some distance from their homes. The Chicago and Northwestern Railroad, meanwhile, did have a depot here, within a short distance of the trolley stop, on the east bank of the river to the south of Main Street. The C&NW Railroad also had extensive factory sidings, lining both sides of the river.
Carpentersville was established in the spring of 1837, when brothers Charles and Daniel Carpenter, along with their families, were frustrated in attempts to ford a swollen Fox River on their way to the Rock River, and so encamped on the river's east bank. Weeks led to months of encampment, until their stay became permanent with the building of a log cabin. The settlement was officially dubbed Carpentersville in 1851. The first U.S. post office was established in 1865 by Julius Carpenter, son of Charles. The small town grew slowly but steadily throughout the latter part of the 19th century, aided by an iron foundry and blacksmith shop. Initially, the steam-powered railroad, the Fox River Valley Railroad, bypassed the small settlement, but changed its route to establish a depot there in 1878.
By the time that the trolley system was built here in 1896, Carpentersville had a population of roughly 1,000 people, many of whom worked in the factories that once lined the river and dominated the town center. Many of the residents worked in Elgin, however, and so the new trolley system was a great aid for their daily transportation. Today, Carpentersville has grown to nearly 38,000 people, who benefit from its idyllic setting along the Fox River.
Proceeding from the bridge, the trolley line headed south, turning from Main Street onto Lincoln Avenue, traveling along the west side of the river. There was a bolt work stop within a few hundred feet of Main Street, followed by 3 more stops, about one every city block. Further on, the city limits stop was where the Riverwalk apartments stand today. A few blocks further south was the Dundee footbridge stop. Residents from the east side of the Fox River could access the trolley by crossing over the Fox River via a pedestrian bridge. The route then stopped at Geneva Street. Followed by a stop at Washington Street, before turning onto 2nd Street. A few blocks further brought us to the Main Street stop, which was then the main trolley stop for Dundee. What was once a lightly traveled road, Main Street, is today well trafficked.
West Dundee was settled in the 1830s, primarily by people of Scottish descent. They gave their settlement the name of Dundee in 1837, in homage to the Scottish city of Dundee in their former homeland. The small hamlet obtained a U.S. post office as early as 1841 and incorporated as a town in 1867. Meanwhile, German settlers moved onto the eastern banks of the Fox River in the 1850s, forming a separate and distinct settlement, naming their village East Dundee and incorporating in 1871. Shortly thereafter, the original Dundee settlement was referred to as West Dundee. The Fox River Valley Railroad built a steam-powered line along the east bank of the Fox River in the mid-1850s, with a stop at East Dundee. This railroad was later acquired by the Chicago and Northwestern in the 1870s.
Although most non-locals tend to refer to Dundee as a single town, it continues to be two separate villages, East Dundee and West Dundee. There were attempts in the 1950s and 1960s to merge the two into one, but none proved successful. When the trolley system was originally built, both communities had a population of about 1,300 people. But today, West Dundee has about 7,000 to 8,000 residents, while East Dundee tallies at about 3,000 residents.
The original plan in 1895 was to build the trolley line along the east side of the Fox River, from Elgin up to Carpentersville, passing through East Dundee. But East Dundee balked at the proposed trolley line, apparently as a result of skepticism from previous failed streetcar propositions. And so the trolley line, as we will see, crossed from the east side of Elgin to West Dundee instead, and hence to Carpentersville.
Departing Main Street in West Dundee, the trolley continued south along 2nd Street for several blocks. It's hard to imagine today that a trolley line once traversed this quiet suburban road. Along this street, there were stops for Edwards Avenue, Garrison Avenue, and Dunning Avenue, from which it made a wide turn to the east through what is today South End Park, bringing it to the first street stop on the west bank of the Fox River. A trolley siding, the 2nd Street siding, stood to the north of the trackway here.
A narrow railroad bridge once carried trolleys to and fro across the Fox River. Spanning over 300 feet, this was at one time referred to as the Dundee Trestle, and today is a pedestrian bridge as part of the Fox River Trail. The trestle was initially constructed of wood, but the piers were replaced by concrete supports in the early part of the 20th century. This bridge and the nearby trolley electrical poles were badly damaged by a tornado in July of 1933, so much so that the railway could not afford the repairs, and so the Dundee to Carpentersville segment of the Fox River Valley trolley system was abandoned after 37 years of service. With the exception of the piers, much of the bridge had been removed by 1960. The bridge we see today was rebuilt in the mid-1990s as part of Fox River Trail improvements.
On the east side of the river, the trolley passed over the Chicago and Northwestern tracks, where another trolley stop was located. From here, we follow the Fox River Trail, which picks up the route of the former trolley heading south. As we shall see throughout this journey, the Fox River Trail only partly mirrors the former trolley system, since the streetcar route often went down the middle of or alongside streets, some of them very busy roads today. Passing along the west side of Duncan Avenue, the trolley made its way for a half mile before coming to the bridge stop, where a bridge once spanned across a small creek draining into the Fox River. Another 1,500 feet or so brings us to the Hickoryville siding and stop, close to present-day Hickory Drive. Further on, we pass by the Chicago Junior College stop, although it's not clear to us why this stop was so named.
The next stop was one of the more major stations and sidings along this stretch of the Fox River trolley system, that being the Trout Park siding and stop. Trout Park started out as a trout hatchery in the 1870s, then evolved into a very popular picnic area and beer garden in the latter decades of the 19th century, drawing in thousands during major events. In 1909, new owners augmented its summertime attractions, adding an amusement park area. It also served as the interchange between the Elgin Street Railway and the Carpentersville, Elgin, and Aurora Railway for a short period of time. Later, it was acquired by the city of Elgin in 1921, and it has since been part of the Elgin City Park District.
And here at the north limits of Elgin, at Trout Park, where the Carpentersville and Dundee Trolley transitioned to the Elgin Street Railway, we, like the railroad, will end our first segment of this journey. In our next episode in this series, we'll explore Elgin's expansive city trolley system and dig deeper into its extensive history.
As always, thanks to our Be Historic channel community, our subscribers, our Super Thanks contributors, and our generous Patreon supporters. If you're enjoying these videos, please remember to like, subscribe, comment, and share. And if you're so inclined, consider supporting our channel via Patreon. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you, in a manner of speaking, in our next video adventure.